right. Hi, Kelvin.
Hi, Erin. Good evening. How are you?
I didn't hear. Can you say hi again, Kelvin?
Yes, yes. Good
There you
evening. How are
are.
you doing? There you
Hi.
go.
Can you see anyone? Or are you just.
I see you.
Oh, good. Hello. It's
Yep.
it's wonderful to see you on screen.
Thank you.
And we'll get right into it. Do you have a hard stop at 8? That'll determine how many questions I ask.
I've got a meeting at shortly after this, so
All
but
right,
we're
we'll
we're
keep
good.
it
We should
snappy.
be good. We should be fine.
All right, well, everyone, if you're just joining us, my name is Erin Heath. I'm Director of Federal Relations here at AAAS. I'm so excited to interview Dr. Kelvin Droegemeier. Kelvin's a professor of atmospheric sciences and special advisor to the Chancellor for Science and Policy at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He also directed the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy from 2019 to 2021. So we just have a few minutes. And in that time, we're going to talk about Kelvin's journey from science to policy. So I'm going to start with the White House, and then I'm going to go backwards, talk about other elements of your career, and then we'll come forward again. How's that sound?
Sounds great. Thank
All
you.
right. So first, I'd love for you to reflect on your time as OSTP director. Looking back, I have three. This is a three-parter, so bear with me.
Okay.
What makes you feel proudest? What was the most challenging aspect? And what surprised you the most?
Yeah, those are great questions, Erin. Thank you. Yes, what made me the proudest really was the things that we actually accomplished for the American science and technology enterprise, which builds, wealth in the country through private companies, fundamental research at our universities, and so on. So I think I was really proud that we got things going like the American AI Initiative, several things in quantum, got all that stuff going. We also put out some policies on things like research security, which are very important to make sure that we both safeguard our research enterprise from malign actors who want to gain advantage at our own, gain benefit at our own advantage, and take advantage of us. And also, we worked very, very hard to get out of the pandemic. Of course, we didn't get out of the pandemic for a while, but we made tremendous progress in getting a vaccine in 11 months and things like that. So that I think was really extraordinary, and it was a tremendous privilege to be a part of that. I'd say with regard to challenge, there's a great thoroughness in the things that one does at the White House. A lot of eyes and different pairs of eyes have to see the things you're working on and go through processes to make sure that they agree with it and so on. It can be a rather time-consuming process, but at the end of the day, what comes out of the back end of it is usually quite good. So it's a little bit slow and very kind of deliberate, but it's really worth it in the end because you're sort of at the tip of the spear doing things that are quite important for the entire nation, in many cases for the world. The thing that really surprised me, I think, and it wasn't perhaps too much of a surprise because I had worked with OSTP before, but that was just the extraordinary quality of the people that we have working in the federal government, at the White House in particular. But the budget of OSTP is quite small, so we really had to bring in people from other agencies. We brought sometimes from the outside, from universities and things like that. And the quality of the people, the thoughtfulness, the extraordinary intellectual capacity was absolutely mind-boggling. And so it was just a thrill to work with them. And again, I wasn't entirely surprised, but the scope of it and the intensity of the work and things like that, the fast pace, is just really amazing, exhilarating, and also exhausting. So those are, hopefully that answers your three-part question there, Erin.
Yeah, that all checks out. Thank you. How's Kelvin's volume? Can everyone hear okay? Yeah? Okay, good. All right. I'd like to know what your advice is for the next White House Science Advisor.
Take your vitamins, get a lot of sleep, and that's not very easy to do, frankly. But being a science advisor to the president and being in the Office of Science Technology Policy, you really are in a position where you can influence. So it's a position of great significant authority and capability, but also one that's tremendously humbling. And so I think that the important thing is to make sure that you really always keep your eyes on the big picture. Sometimes you can get mired down in a lot of the details, but at the end of the day, you realize you're working on behalf of the president, on behalf of the people of America. You're working on behalf of the scientists and the researchers and the private sector companies who depend so heavily on our research outcomes, our fundamental research, our curiosity-driven research, that results in us having multiple trillion-dollar companies now. So it really is, the advice would be, you're all in on it, go for it, do really great work for the American people, for the science enterprise, and realize you have tremendous responsibility. But I'll tell you what, it's a blast. Every day that I went to the White House, I couldn't believe where I was. You just never really get used to it. It's quite an amazing experience.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to zoom back a little bit. Now, you had what could be considered a similar role, but for the state of Oklahoma. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to the importance of scientists and engineers engaging in policy on the state and local level. It's not just about the federal. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, no, it's a really great question, a great point that, in terms of science policy, of course, like you said, it happens at the federal level. In OSTP, it happens in agencies, cabinet departments and things like that. But it also happens in our states and our universities. So policy development and application for science and technology research and education really is a broad spectrum of things. And the key thing is to align those policies to where they reinforce one another, they don't duplicate one another, and they also don't add additional, in some cases, compliance type burdens that really don't add much value to our research enterprise, but frankly, take a lot of time away from researchers to do the things that they were schooled to do. So we need to have compliance. We need to make sure that we're doing things the right way, accountability, transparency, openness, things like that, honesty and integrity. But we also need to make sure that we don't overdo it in the sense of having people write multiple reports, that we have uniformity across agencies and state government as far as the kinds of things you have to do to where you're not running into a different type of a form for every different type of agency you work with and things like that. So it's truly a multi-spectral thing, not just with the government, but also the private sector and our universities. So we're all players in this space. We all try to do our best to create policies that work. And the state level has some similarities to the federal policymaking process and structure, but it also has some very interesting differences.
Thank you. All right, we have 5 minutes, so I'm going to maybe smush the next two questions together.
Okay.
You got your start, or you were a researcher, and your focus was extreme weather events.
Right.
So I'd love to hear about what that was like and why you decided to make the transition into engaging in policy. Because you joined the National Science Board, was it 2004? I think if memory serves.
Right.
Yeah. So tell us about your research career and then that transition to policy. What drew you to policy?
Yeah, right. No, it's a great question. I grew up in central Kansas, was fascinated by the weather, did my undergraduate work at the University of Oklahoma where there are a lot of tornadoes. And so I finished there, came here to the University of Illinois to grad school, and basically spent the early part of my career, actually my whole career, as a professor at a university. I love working with students. I love the academic environment. There's nothing like it in the world. And so I ran major research centers, had large research groups, did a lot of that sort of thing. But I got early on in my career, I got interested in policy because a lot of the work I was doing had sort of science policy and administrative dimensions. And then I started serving on some boards of nonprofits that ran major research organizations like the National Center for Atmospheric Research. And that got me more interested in how can I help shape the research environment to make sure that it's as effective as possible, that we're doing the best we possibly can, we're using resources the most effectively, and so on. And then 2004, as you say, I literally was teaching class, got a call from the White House about joining the National Science Board, or being appointed to it by President Bush. And I told my students, they said, well, you usually don't interrupt class. That's interesting. You took a call. And I said, yeah, it was the White House. They're like, oh, yeah, right. It was the White House. And so that sort of got my start, really in that arena. And then being vice president for research at my university got me more in tune with other disciplines, as did the National Science Board. And so it just kept going from there, and then got a call for potentially being the director of OSTP. So my whole career was sort of pointed in that direction. And after a while, although I enjoy research and stuff, I really got more interested in policy and helping, sort of scaffold the big picture, you might say.
All right, excellent. Well, I have one more question, and I think it's a very important one, and it's one that I'm asking everyone that I get to talk to on this stage. You've been to our meeting before, so you know what a range of people come to this meeting, all united by our love of science and technology. What message do you want to share with the community here today?
I would say that, the future of our science and technology research enterprise is very bright. We face some challenges in a variety of ways. Our national debt, is $36 trillion. But funding for fundamental research and applied research and making sure we have a healthy research enterprise is extremely important. And I look at this in some sense as a scientist as an equation, that our global competitiveness in science and engineering research and education and so on is equal to our capabilities and our assets. That's the numerator. The denominator underneath that are mainly threats that we face and challenges that we face, some of which are self-imposed. And so, historically, during the Cold War and before the Cold War, after World War II, we had extremely strong capabilities. No one could touch us. And the threats that we faced were relatively small in the denominator. So our competitiveness, our capabilities divided by our threats and challenges was huge. Well, now the threats have increased dramatically. So the denominator's gone up and our investments have sort of stalled out. So our competitiveness is sort of not nearly what it used to be. So we need to continue investing strongly in our research enterprise. We have to play a very strong offense. We don't want to play to not lose. We don't want to get really conservative and say we're playing to not lose. We need to strongly play to win. And so for the next generation, for those who are actually in the science and technology enterprise today, I would say although we face challenges, we are able to solve those challenges ourselves and make sure that our enterprise is as strong as possible going forward. And as you know, we will be rolling out the Vision for American Science Technology. We've got a session on that tomorrow at AAAS meeting, and we'll be rolling it out here shortly after that. And that presents a very exciting, I think, portrayal and picture, both of what the opportunities are, but what the challenges are and how we can address them.
Thanks so much, Kelvin. Always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Erin. Great to see you. Thanks so much.
And I think this is the last Sci-Mic for the night, right? All right. Well, thanks, everyone. You just heard a plug for the VAST session tomorrow. I don't have it in front of me what time it is, but I think it's later in the afternoon. So I encourage all of you to come to that. I think it's going to be great. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.